Okay, welcome back everybody. So we've got two final sessions starting now and running till sometime after 4 o'clock. And to start with, we're going to be looking at innovation in the UK hydrogen sector. So a really exciting topic. So much innovation already taken place, currently taking place, and still needed to make us a great success in this space, as we've been talking about this afternoon and earlier. On the panel with me, I've got three individuals from quite different backgrounds. So I think what we'll do is we'll start by giving everybody a chance to introduce yourselves, and then we'll dive into a few questions, an opportunity to ask questions either with your hand up or on the app, and we'll see how we go. Okay, so Lee, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Hello, Lee Christian, Technical Sales Manager at Bosch. I work on the solid oxide fuel cell, so we're stationary power generation, 60% electrical efficiency without going into the sales pitch. But yeah, a hydrogen-ready solid oxide fuel cell that is ready to go, natural gas, biogas, but like I say, hydrogen as we look to the future.
Thank you. Archie?
Hello everyone, Archie Farmer from Carnot. So we're a UK technology startup based here in London, and we're developing double efficiency, fuel agnostic, zero emission engines. So the crux of our approach, we're also addressing the hard to abate sectors like static power generation, shipping, and heavy duty vehicles. But our engines will be able to operate on existing fuels and be manufactured at scale using existing supply chains, reducing CO2 emissions by 50%, and then they'll also be able to transition to operating on hydrogen, ammonia, zero emission fuels once those are available at scale.
Thank you. Will?
Thank you. Will Joyce. I'm from Innovate UK and UK&I. So I'm the technical lead for a program that's investing in carbon capture and storage and low carbon hydrogen to decarbonise our industrial clusters in the UK. So we're funding the FEED studies of some of the major CCS projects, such as Zero Carbon Humber, High Net, Net Zero Teesside, South Wales and Scotland Net Zero Infrastructure. And within that, of course, there's a big blue hydrogen focus. So we fund two of the big blue hydrogen projects in Humber and High Net as well.
Thanks very much. So you can see here we've got quite a diverse mix of different perspectives. So we're going to take a look at the innovation space from quite high level. Before we do that, I should introduce myself. So I'm the CEO of the Hydrogen Energy Association. Until our conference a couple of weeks ago, we were the UK Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Association. We're the leading trade group in the space, 100 plus members, more joining every week, and we represent the full hydrogen value chain from all forms of low carbon production through handling, distribution and storage and into the applications. So we've rebranded to better reflect the depth and breadth of our coverage. Our mission is all around promoting the sector and our members, both at home and abroad, and making sure that we've got the right policies in place with the overarching aim of delivering growth for the sector. So let's dive into a few questions. So one of the things with hydrogen that we've heard through the past couple of days is obviously, although we are an island, this is a global endeavour. So we've got innovations taking place both in industry and academia and also in the UK and across the globe. I'd be interested to hear your views on what lessons we can take from elsewhere, whether it's the funding support for innovation or other frameworks that are helping to pull innovation forward. So, Will, do you want to take a start on that one?
Yeah, so it's a great opening question. I mean, lessons we can learn from elsewhere. I think actually in the UK we're doing a pretty good job. I think others can learn a lot from what we're doing. I mean, you know, we have the world's first hydrogen strategy, so we've got a twin track approach to hydrogen production, so we don't distinguish between blue or green, we just call it low carbon hydrogen, and we've got tremendous natural assets at our disposal. We did have the world's largest offshore wind capacity for renewable energy generation, and then for blue hydrogen, in terms of CCS, we have the ability to become a world leader in that technology. We've got offshore storage potential that's equivalent to the rest of mainland Europe. We've got about 78 gigatons of storage available to meet our domestic demand for hundreds of years to come. So I think we, as the UK, really have a strong potential to become a world leader in hydrogen technologies. There's been a tremendous policy acceleration over the last few years. I mean, look back to 2019, we were the first major economy to legislate net zero, to have a legally binding net zero target by 2050. The hydrogen strategy outlined 5 gigawatts of production by 2030. We then doubled that last year with a 10 gigawatt target. We've got some major hydrogen funding initiatives that are currently sort of online at the moment. The Net Zero Hydrogen Fund, which is 240 million, 4 strands, so supporting projects right the way across the pipeline of production, right from pre-feasibility through to feasibility, feed. And I think what's important about that program actually is there's a real emphasis on production. I mean, today we've heard a lot about applications of hydrogen, how can we sort of use it, but from my point of view, there's not a huge amount of point of discussing that if there's no production at scale. And I think what's good and what we've recognised here in the UK is we need to stimulate production, fuel switch, easy opportunities to fuel switch as those industrial users proximal to industrial sites. And then once production is stimulated at scale, we can then work on developing that full-scale hydrogen economy. So applications, for gas grid blending, transport, maritime, aviation, and other industrial users through sort of these dual, hydrogen CO2 transmission pipelines across clusters. So I actually think the future's quite bright in the UK. I mean, I'm sorry I've sort of kiboshed your original question. What can we learn from others? I mean, there's the US, there's IRA, there's huge commitments in Europe with electrolyzers in Germany and things like that. But Germany don't have blue hydrogen ability. They don't have a coastline where they can store CO2 in perpetuity under the ground. So in the UK we have options for both, really. I think that's a really sort of powerful foundation that we have that we can build on.
Anything to add, you guys?
Yeah, just to echo it in a way, because it feels like we're really close, doesn't it? But we haven't connected the dots. The last talk we talked about being at the bottom of the S. Mm-hmm. and starting to scale up, and that does feel where we are, because when you list the projects, when you list what's there, I mean, up on the Bosch stand we've got the Bosch ecosystem, and it's panacea. It's the ideal, and it's all there. It just needs connecting. It needs incentivizing. You need a pence per kilowatt. You need to know to drive forward that project. So, like I say, IRA, it puts the headlines out there, and hopefully we need a lead to follow, although they're very much catching up. We're almost there. We've got to connect the dots. We've got to incentivize it. It's got to come from government, but the answers are there.
Yeah, definitely. It feels like, as we heard in the last presentation, we're on a really good sets of stepping stones, but the further and faster is an absolute key message that we need to get out there.
Yeah.
Archie.
So it's such a broad subject, hydrogen, isn't it? Because you've got the whole value chain from production right through to end users, but then you've got the regulatory environment, you've got policy. All of this needs innovation, and it all needs to innovate at the same rate, because as we've seen from previous speakers, if any one of those is held back, it holds everything back. And when you look across, the kind of key players in each of those strands, the name that keeps popping up is Germany. They're in the top 10 in terms of project for production by 2030. Distribution, lots of projects, to distribute, to create networks for hydrogen, I think what we could learn from them is like people have said before, is identifying what your strengths are and really going for it. So creating an environment where companies and investors really want to operate. And I think that a lot of that is policy. So, it's already been mentioned, but, I'm really hoping there's a response to IRA and, the EU to really put out a statement that the UK, wants to remain, a world leader in terms of renewable energy and hydrogen and regulation as well. I think we need to make sure that sectors which are used to operating at a certain, speed over the last 50 years are on board with the rate of the pace that we're going to require to really be a major player within the hydrogen sector. But I also agree that I think the UK is already fantastic at innovation, especially R&D, and the part of generating intellectual property, universities, corporate collaborations with industry. I think where we could probably improve is taking those ideas and making sure we commercialise them in the UK and making sure there's an attractive market for those companies to do that in the UK and manufacture in the UK rather than, offshoring or even, potentially moving abroad.
Yeah. Okay, that leads us, I think, quite well into the next question. I mean, certainly we have heard anecdotally of companies and projects that have been drawn by the Inflation Reduction Act to look to the US, and keen to sort of explore to what extent as a startup you're seeing that as a risk for yourselves and other peers in the space, and how we can, the specifics of how we can respond. What are your thoughts?
So I think in terms of what it's done, so it's obviously stimulated or initiated the kind of global hydrogen race for sector. And I think in one of the other presentations they talked about it being a combination of collaboration and competition. And I think it's shifted the needle towards competition. So we, for that reason, again, we need to respond in kind. And as a startup, the holy grail for a lot of startups is to be in the US because, with or without the IRA, because, it's such a big market. It's quite common for startups to do their R&D in the UK and then do what's called the Delaware flip. And I think this has only kind of accentuated that. So, I keep coming back to it, but I'd really like to see a response in terms of policy, but also in terms of legislation. So legislation that's really going to actively encourage companies to stay in the UK and investors that there is going to be a big market for those companies in the UK going forward, because I think that's what's missing at the moment. It's just uncertainty around what market actually is there going to be in the UK.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Will, from an Innovate UK point of view, we've heard in the past of bilateral collaboration agreements with other countries of various forms and flavours. Does that have a role here? And how is the UK doing in terms of working with the US, and does that help with this particular conundrum?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very different, IRA is very different from, what we've got up and running in the UK in terms of a more collaborative government trying to work with industry to solve this. IRA is a very simple process of we'll give you a subsidy and just get on with it. But then in the UK, we're looking to work towards contracts for difference, regulated asset bases to sort of make the energy security bills going through Parliament to make this a more robust process. I think if we can work at pace over the next few years to carry on doing what we are doing, then I think our system is, there's I suppose it is tricky. I suppose, in the UK we've got these major infrastructure projects where the major projects team will come over. We're talking about multinational companies that have global presence, and they were sort of looking at the UK to go first, sort of become world leaders because of the subsidy and things like that. But IRA's sort of come about, and it's the money in these big companies, the big oil and gas majors, are looking at blue hydrogen, may well go to the US and things like that. So it may well have an effect on our big emission sites that are looking to convert to blue hydrogen in those CCS networks. So I think definitely bilateral discussions and working with the US, working with the EU to essentially leverage the expertise of these multinational companies, which are the only companies that can really deliver what we need in terms of hydrogen production, not application, but hydrogen production. So absolutely.
Okay, thanks. Lee, would you like to add to this? What's your perspective, from looking out from the world of Bosch?
As Archie was saying, it comes down to policy, and that's what drives us. And everything that we've done for the last 2 days, it's going to come down to that. It comes down to being driven. You need a financial reasoning for these projects. You need an off-taker of last resort, as was mentioned in the previous. The grid is the ideal off-taker of last resort. Great if you can get elsewhere, but you need a fixed home for your product, so that you can finance the project, so that you can put assets on the ground. The capacity market, RHI, puts gas engines on the ground, and like I say, that's financial endpoint, and that certainty gives you that. So to me, the off-taker being the grid sounds like a great idea. That's where you start, and then we get assets on the ground, and then we start, and it begins. The boost to the economy, the boost. I know there's arguments of the grid only decarbonises, but you've got to start somewhere. The solutions are there. We know that this is going to happen. We know it has to happen. It just needs that support. It needs that, like I say, off-taker of last resort.
Okay, and alongside that, we're having a little focus here on innovation. From a Bosch perspective, the more sort of pure play innovation piece, what would you like to see to help accelerate that or bring innovation forward?
Yeah, well, exactly what we just said there. So the policy that puts in place the off-takers, so that we can get the financial in there, and then, like I say, if you've not seen it, head upstairs, the Bosch ecosystem. That's the ideal. We have actually, something was mentioned yesterday. The chap Sergei from Cummins was talking about the potential. They mentioned at the end of one of the talks about what's the takeaway that you've seen, and he talked about the potential of wind, because obviously at the moment we size for grid, and naturally if you size just for generation and like I say, having these assets always on 24/7, 365, you need that off-taker in order to facilitate that, and it all comes back to that. We know the solution, we can see the solution, it's there. But to link it all together, you have to have that support, that policy.
Okay, thank you. Before we move on with the rest of you, there's a chance to ask questions coming up, so we'll pick those up shortly. Let's finish a bit more conversation first. Good to see the enthusiasm, though. Will, from an Innovate UK point of view, are there things or new approaches that you're looking at in terms of more down at the pure play innovation end of things, new ways to bring industry and academia together, or to foster industrial R&D, or any of those things that we should all know about?
Yeah, I think hydrogen is a particularly interesting one, because if you look at the two main production types, electrolytic hydrogen, CCUS-enabled hydrogen. For electrolytic hydrogen, there's a huge amount of stuff we can do. We can make electrolyzers bigger, more efficient, increase the stack size, make them modular. There's so much kind of innovation right the way through, from university-led innovation to TRL9, sort of innovation, that sort of thing. But if you look at CCUS-enabled hydrogen, I think the innovation is actually the rollout of this at scale. So SMR, ATR, Johnson Matthey, low carbon hydrogen, that sort of thing exists. We now just need to deploy the CCS network at a scale that kind of we've never seen before. So I think if we're talking about, you know, routes to get to net zero, I mean, low carbon hydrogen, we'll see how market forces determine the production mix by 2030 in terms of blue or green, but maybe blue is a slightly quicker way to get off the ground immediately, and then sort of obviously green hydrogen is this utopia that we're working towards. But I think we've got to think about, you know, how can we make, you know, the biggest kind of momentum at the start of the process, just sort of, you know, what you were saying, Lee, sort of, you know, let's get on with it, let's focus on production, let's get hydrogen blended in the gas grid, and yeah, I think it's interesting.
Okay, thank you. Archie, from a startup perspective, are there changes to the way innovation is supported that you would find helpful for, you know, finessing your technology or growing your technology, or would you agree that it's more about deployment and scale up at this point?
I think that we've certainly seen changes. So, you know, right from when we started in 2019, you know, our initial funding with the majority of it was grant funding. And it used to be that you were awarded a grant project and left to just get on with that. You know, you have to report quarterly, but it was all project focused. And what we've seen now is actually, if you're awarded a grant, you're also awarded support in terms of, you know, thinking about the commercialization aspects, thinking about the market, what regionally, you know, where's your, where is your kind of best product market fit, etc. And I think, you know, that's absolutely critical, basically, because you get a lot of great ideas, normally from, you know, people who are very technically excellent, and, you know, just having that support, thinking about your go-to-market strategy is a very useful thing to have. I do think we can improve in terms of how many of these early stage companies actually get to market, and I know there's a lot of work being put into that with the high value manufacturing catapults and things like that. And I think, yeah, if I were to say that there's an area where we need to focus on, it's that TRL 4-5 to actual commercialization that I think we could do with the most improvement.
Yeah. Okay, an interesting perspective. Okay, time for some questions. I think I saw a couple of hands up. I think I saw the one at the back there first, in the middle. I don't know if we have got a mic coming. Other people might know who you are, but I don't. So if you can say who you are, that would be great.
This one is for Innovate UK.
Can you speak up? Or maybe hold.
Can you hear me?
Oh, that's better. There we go. We can hear you.
Yeah. This one is for Innovate UK to start and then to the startup. Innovate UK, is there any desire on your side to actually change your tactics and stop funding people that have got actually a lot of funds available to them, like the ones you were mentioning, the existing oil and gas that have all our money anyway, to fund people that can actually make a difference? Because for one thing, I have not seen, I mean, I've been through 500,000 patents, and I haven't seen one of them that came from an existing big industry. It's always the guy that is in the kitchen, you know, practicing, building, researching. He's the one that actually produces those technologies. It's not those people that you usually fund. Because as somebody that has been, I've tried 3 times with Innovate UK, and you keep on turning down people. Not just me. I know a lot of people that have been turned down. So your policies, the way you handle it, you're always thinking to fund the ones that actually have the funds and don't need it. and cannot, actually, they do not produce anything. I can tell you, because I can stand here and say, we can produce all the hydrogen we need, we can electrify the country, in a 5 to 7 year period, we can actually be energy independent if we were funding somebody like me. But you're not going to do it by funding, let's say, Shell. But you still fund Shell. Now, the startup, I think that's the way to go. But startup is not about doing or picking up technologies, outdated, old, fit for the museum technology. Startup is starting something new. So I hope you think about pushing new things. Because today, like I said, I can stand up here and say, with my formula, we can be electricity independent in the next 5 to 7 years without the need of importing a drop of fuel from outside, or even digging the ground around here, or polluting the environment. We can do it with green hydrogen.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Will?
Well, thank you for your question. In terms of carbon capture and storage, which is my main day job that we fund, CCS is fundamentally unprofitable. Why would anyone do it without funding, essentially? And what we fund is early market movers, so companies that will take the risks at the beginning, and then others will be able to learn from those risks, learn from those mistakes as they've been taken forward. So a major emphasis of all the funding programs is knowledge sharing, knowledge dissemination, and also the things that we can achieve in parallel to the grant funding as well, such as with CCS networks, investing in parts of the country where we can boost the competitiveness of these regions, we can drive inward investment, we can create and protect jobs for future low-carbon industrial sectors. So I think there's an emphasis of every funding programme that we fund a particular specific scope so that we get the best value for money for it. But if something's fundamentally unprofitable, and your example, those companies are the companies that have the capability to deliver hydrogen production at scale, which is what we need, because we're talking today about hydrogen, but hydrogen doesn't exist in the UK. There's a very small amount of grey hydrogen. So what's the point of talking about hydrogen buses if we can't get that hydrogen at scale from somewhere? So that's the reason why we fund those bigger companies. We also fund a lot of smaller companies well on hydrogen applications and startups and things that will move forward. So we have this continual pipeline of things. So we're not just sort of funding here and there, it's pushing everything through to create this full-scale hydrogen economy, which is what we're going to need to be able to convert away from gas and other things we're dependent on at the moment to actually stimulate this. So I think there's a lot of merit in funding in absolutely funding both. So I will stand by that as our raison d'etre for these funding programs.
Thanks, Will. We had a question here. And we'll take this last question and then move on to the next session. So.
Okay, hear me?
Yes.
That's good. Yeah, that's more like it, guys. Right, good afternoon, one and all. David Scholes from Bosch Rexroth, Electro-Hydraulic Mechanical Division, have a sincere focus on mankind and for the future and the decisions that have to be made. You started this debate on the reckoning of reflecting and learning from others. My first point is March of this year, the European Commission took charge of a law for Europe to introduce over 600 gas stations for hydrogen on the main network, the routes throughout Europe to refuel trucks predominantly. If there is legislation and law behind this, it gives an insight to any startup company, anyone wishing to contribute to this change, to see there is clear direction. We will, we can, we will do, rather than we might, perhaps, possibly. There has to be a change of focus. Lee, you are absolutely on the ball. Join the dots up. We once had nationalised industries. That is a thing of the past. But what we do have today is something like Network Rail. Network Rail gives us an infrastructure, point to point, town to town, that then companies can engage on and drive their trains along the tracks. If we have no guide, no map, no network, the drivers behind this, is it all but hot air? If I look towards, and I sense within the room, there's a lot of concern over the manner in which we generate our green electricity. The drivers towards Zone 1, Zone 2, Zone 3, the real estate of the North Sea to enable us to run the wind turbines, in deeper water. Deeper water gives us the strength of the wind, more power, more energy to actually use to derive our green hydrogen for the security for the future of mankind. This focus and effort towards the manner in which we broker that real estate for investment to come in is a must. The technologies that exist, the technologies that the entrepreneurs such as Archie and his company want to understand that these opportunities exist are paramount to our future. We can't sit on the fence and merely debate. We want, we can, we will do. That's what I offer, and I wonder if there is any responses upon that. Thank you.
Archie.
Yeah, actually you've just put much more eloquently what I was trying to say earlier about giving confidence that there is a market. So to be more specific, as a developer of zero-emission hydrogen combustion engines, the government still hasn't, decided or publicised whether it's going to ban internal combustion engines full stop. So what the EU have done is define zero emission and let industry decide how they're going to do that. And as the VP of Engineering from Bosch showed yesterday, they can easily meet those zero emission targets with their H2 internal combustion engine. Here we're left in complete limbo. As a UK startup, we don't know if there's going to be any market here. At the moment, generally you want to be close to your customer, and all the customers are in Germany. If you look at the refueling infrastructure, I think it was 100 hydrogen refueling stations in Germany, and we have 12. So this is, kind of the specifics of what I was getting at, and we could really do with not just clarity, but sensible legislation. That I personally don't think the government's best role is to tell industry how they have to meet zero emissions, because industry are the one who deal with their customers every day. So they're the ones who have the knowledge what their customers want and don't want. They have the knowledge of what scales, what doesn't. I think the ideal thing that government can do is set the zero emission levels that you have to meet, and then do everything to stimulate UK companies to achieve that.
Yeah, I wanted to be funny by just answering yes. But I'm not going to, because I'm going to a little bit more meat on the bone. It's two P's, policy and price. You need to be able to, and you need to know what it's going to, financial. You need to know the financial side of it. Like I say, going back to the capacity market, if you give me a contract and a price, I'll put assets on the ground. I know what I can generate at. We join the dots. We know what price we can put hydrogen into the grid at. Like I say, that's my off-taker of last resort. If I get a better offer, fair enough, but I can now put assets on the ground. I can now get this ball rolling, and that's what we need to do, because we talk about it for too long.
Thank you. I think we've come to some interesting conclusions there. Policy and price, a very good point to end on, and certainty, as you said, Archie. So I'd like to thank our three contributors to the panel we just completed. Thank you all, and look forward to the next discussions.
Thank you very much.